The rain hammered against the windshield so hard that Jessica Everett almost missed the body lying motionless on the side of the mountain road. And when her headlights finally caught the dark shape sprawled across the gravel shoulder, her heart lurched into her throat as she slammed on the brakes. Her car skidded slightly on the wet asphalt before coming to a stop about 20 feet past the figure. Jessica sat frozen for a moment, hands trembling on the steering wheel, before she fumbled for her phone and threw open the door. The cold October rain immediately soaked through her scrubs as she ran back toward the man lying face down in the mud. Oh God," she muttered, dropping to her knees beside him. Years of nursing experience kicked in as she checked for a pulse at his neck. Strong and steady. Relief flooded through her. She carefully rolled him onto his back, wincing at the deep gash above his eyebrow that was bleeding profusely. His expensive suit was torn and muddy, and she could see what looked like tire marks on the road nearby. Hit and run, she thought grimly. Someone had struck this man and left him to die on this isolated mountain road. The man groaned, his eyelids fluttering. He was probably in his early 30s, with dark hair plastered to his forehead by rain and blood. Even unconscious and injured, there was something striking about his sharp jawline and strong features. "Can you hear me?" Jessica asked loudly, leaning close to his face. "I'm a nurse. You've been in an accident. Can you tell me your name?" His eyes opened slightly, unfocused and glazed with confusion. His lips moved, but no sound came out. "It's okay, don't try to talk. I'm calling for help." Jessica dialed 911 with shaking fingers, giving the dispatcher their location on Route 47, about 15 miles outside of Cedar Falls. The nearest hospital was 40 minutes away, and with this weather, an ambulance would take even longer. "Madam, given the remote location and weather conditions, response time is estimated at 50 to 60 minutes, the dispatcher said. "Are you able to provide first aid?" Jessica looked down at the injured man, then at her car. "I'm a registered nurse. I can stabilize him, but he needs immediate medical attention. That head wound is serious. If you're able to safely transport him, that may be faster than waiting for emergency services." It went against protocol, but Jessica knew the dispatcher was right. This man could have a brain bleed, a fractured skull, or internal injuries. Every minute counted. "Help me," she said softly to the man, hooking her arms under his shoulders. He was heavy, probably over 6 feet tall and solidly built, but adrenaline gave her strength. She managed to half drag, half walk him to her car and get him into the back seat, positioning him so she could monitor his breathing. The drive to Cedar Falls Memorial Hospital felt endless. Jessica kept glancing in the rearview mirror, talking to him to keep him conscious. "Stay with me. What's your name? Can you tell me anything about yourself?" The man's eyes would open and close, but he seemed unable to form words. Blood continued to seep from the wound on his head, despite the makeshift bandage she had pressed against it, using her jacket. When she finally pulled up to the emergency entrance, Jessica laid on the horn. 2 orderlies rushed out with a gurney, and within minutes, the mystery man was being wheeled through the doors she had walked through hundreds of times as a staff member. "Jessica, what are you doing here?" Dr. Patricia Morrison appeared, her gray hair pulled back in its usual tight bun. "I thought you had the night off. I found him on Route 47. Hit and run. He's been unconscious, possible traumatic brain injury, significant blood loss from a head laceration." Jessica rattled off her observations as they rushed alongside the gurney. "Did he have any identification?" "I didn't check. I was focused on getting him here." Dr. Morrison nodded. "We'll take it from here. Go home, Jessica. You look half drowned." But Jessica found herself unable to leave. She changed into dry scrubs from her locker and hovered near the emergency department, waiting for news. It was nearly midnight when Dr. Morrison finally emerged from the trauma bay. He's stable. The CT scan shows a moderate concussion and some swelling, but no skull fracture or brain bleed. We've stitched up the laceration. He should make a full recovery. That's good, Jessica said, relief washing over her. Did he say who he is? Dr. Morrison's expression shifted to concern. That's the problem. He's conscious now, but he can't tell us his name. He has no idea who he is or what happened to him. Jessica felt her stomach drop. Amnesia. Retrograde amnesia, most likely caused by the head trauma. It could be temporary, but there's no way to know for certain. We're running his fingerprints through the system, but that could take time. He had no wallet, no phone, nothing to identify him. Can I see him, doctor? Morrison raised an eyebrow. Jessica, you saved his life, but he's not your responsibility now, I know. I just want to make sure he's okay. The doctor sighed but gestured for Jessica to follow her. They walked through the familiar hallways to room 312. The man was sitting up in bed, looking lost and confused. Someone had cleaned the blood from his face, and with his head bandaged and his face pale, he looked younger and more vulnerable than he had on that dark road. His eyes fixed on Jessica as she entered, and something flickered in them. Recognition? No, that was impossible. This is Jessica Everett, Dr. Morrison said gently. She's the nurse who found you and brought you here. You owe her your life. The man stared at Jessica, his dark eyes intense. Thank you, he said, his voice rough. I wish I could tell you my name in return. Do you remember anything? Jessica asked, moving closer to the bed. Anything at all? He pressed his fingers to his temples, wincing. Nothing. It's like there's just this blank space where my life should be. I don't know who I am, where I'm from, if I have family. His voice cracked slightly. It's terrifying. Jessica's heart ached for him. She had seen patients with amnesia before, but it was rare and always disturbing to witness someone so completely untethered from their own identity. The memories might come back, she said softly. Brain injuries are unpredictable. Give it time. What if they don't? He looked at her with such raw vulnerability that she had to look away. Dr. Morrison cleared her throat. We'll keep you for observation for at least 72 hours. In the meantime, we're working on identifying you. The police have been notified about the hit and run, and they'll want to speak with you when you're feeling up to it. Over the next 3 days, Jessica found herself visiting room 312 more often than she should have. The mystery man, whom the staff had started calling John Doe, had no visitors, no one looking for him. The police investigation had turned up nothing. No missing persons reports matched his description, and his fingerprints weren't in any database. I must not be a criminal, at least, he joked weakly when Detective Reynolds gave him the news. That's something. Jessica brought him magazines and books, though he confessed that nothing felt familiar. They talked for hours during her breaks. Without a past to discuss, their conversations centered on the present, on small observations about life in the hospital, on the view from his window of the mountains in the distance. You're probably the only person I know, he said on the third day, watching as Jessica adjusted his Roman 4. Isn't that strange? My entire world is 3 days old and you're in most of it. Jessica smiled, though the comment made her chest feel tight. That's a lot of pressure. I barely know what I'm doing with my own life. Tell me about it. Your life, I mean. She settled into the chair beside his bed. There's not much to tell. I'm 27, grew up here in Cedar Falls, became a nurse because I wanted to help people. I work too much. My apartment is too small, and I have a cat named Pickles who barely tolerates me. That sounds nice. Normal. He smiled, and it transformed his face. Jessica felt something flutter in her stomach that she quickly pushed down. This man was a patient, vulnerable, and alone. Whatever she was feeling was just sympathy. "What about relationships?" he asked. "Boyfriend? Husband?" "No," Jessica said, feeling her cheeks warm. "I don't really have time for dating. The hospital keeps me pretty busy." "I wonder if I have someone," he said quietly, looking down at his hands. "A wife, a girlfriend, kids. What if there are people out there terrified because I've disappeared?" "We'll figure it out," Jessica promised, though she had no idea if that was true. On the fourth day, Dr. Morrison declared him physically fit for discharge, but that created a new problem. He had nowhere to go, no money, no identification. Social Services was working on getting him emergency documentation and finding temporary housing, but the system moved slowly. "This is insane," he said, frustrated. "I'm going to be homeless because I can't remember my own name." Jessica made a decision that she knew was probably foolish. "You could stay with me, just temporarily until we figure things out," he stared at her. "I couldn't ask you to do that." "You're not asking, I'm offering. Look, my apartment has a pull-out couch and I'm gone most days anyway. You'd be doing me a favor, actually." "Someone needs to keep Pickles company." "Jessica, you've already done so much, so let me do a little more." That was how Yannick Nelson, the name they had finally settled on for paperwork purposes, since they needed to call him something, ended up living in Jessica's cramped one-bedroom apartment on the edge of Cedar Falls. The name had come from a random selection of popular names from the year that doctors estimated he was born. It felt strange calling him that, but John Doe had been worse. The first week was awkward. Yannick was clearly uncomfortable accepting so much charity, and he threw himself into making himself useful. He cleaned the apartment, figured out how to use her ancient stove to make meals, and even won over Pickles, who had never liked anyone except Jessica. "You're a natural with animals," Jessica observed, coming home to find Pickles actually sitting in Yannick's lap, purring. "Maybe I worked with animals," he said hopefully. "A veterinarian, but nothing triggered his memories. They tried everything the doctors suggested." Jessica took him to different places around Cedar Falls, hoping something would spark recognition. They visited the local library, the park, the shops downtown. Nothing. "I'm sorry," Yannick said one evening as they sat on her small balcony, watching the sunset over the mountains. "I feel like I'm taking advantage of your kindness." "You're not," Jessica said firmly, "and you need to stop apologizing. It's just frustrating. I see you working these long shifts, coming home exhausted, and here I am, completely useless." "You're not useless. You fixed my broken cabinet, you've been cooking amazing meals, and you're the only reason Pickles isn't completely feral." He smiled slightly. "I wish I could contribute financially. I hate being dependent on you." Jessica understood his frustration. It had been 3 weeks since the accident, and they were no closer to discovering his identity. She had been paying for everything on her modest nurse's salary, and while she would never complain, it was getting tight. "The social worker said your emergency assistance should come through soon," she reminded him. "Maybe I should get a job. Even without ID, there must be something I could do. Let's focus on recovering your memory first." But as the weeks turned into a month, then too, the situation became more complex in ways Jessica hadn't anticipated. Living with Yannick had become comfortable, natural. They fell into routines. He would have coffee ready when she woke up for her early shifts. She would pick up groceries on her way home and they would cook dinner together. They watched movies in the evening, arguing playfully about genres and plots, and somewhere along the way, Jessica realized she was falling for him. It was a terrible idea. He didn't know who he was. He might have a whole other life, other people who loved him. But when he laughed at her terrible jokes, when he looked at her with those intense dark eyes, when his hand accidentally brushed hers while washing dishes, she felt something she had never felt before. "I got a job," Yannick announced one evening in early December. "At the warehouse on Industrial Street. They're willing to pay cash while I sort out my documentation." "That's great," Jessica said, meaning it. She could see how much he needed to feel productive, to have purpose. The warehouse job was physical and demanding, but Yannick took to it with determination. Jessica noticed how he seemed to have a natural efficiency in organizing and managing systems. He was promoted to a supervisory role within 2 weeks. "I must have done something like this before," he said, studying his hands, which had developed calluses. "It feels right, being in charge of logistics." "Maybe you were a manager somewhere," Jessica suggested. "Or maybe I'm just good at telling people where to put boxes," he said with self-deprecating humor. As Christmas approached, Jessica tried to ignore the growing tension between them. There were moments when she would catch Yannick looking at her with an expression that made her heart race. Times when they stood too close in her small kitchen, when the air felt charged with something unspoken. One snowy evening, as they decorated a small Christmas tree Jessica had bought, their fingers touched, reaching for the same ornament. Neither of them pulled away. "Jessica," Yannick said softly, "I need to tell you something." Her heart hammered. "What?" "I don't know who I was before, but I know who I am now, and the person I am now is falling in love with you." Jessica's breath caught. "Yannick, you don't know that. You might remember everything tomorrow and realize you feel completely different." "I don't think I will." He set down the ornament and turned to face her fully. "Even if I get my memories back, even if I find out I had another life, what I feel for you is real. This is real." "But what if you have someone else? What if there's a woman somewhere waiting for you? We've checked everything. No one has reported me missing. The police investigation went nowhere. Whoever I was, nobody is looking for me." His voice was pained. "Maybe that tells me everything I need to know about my old life." Jessica wanted to believe him. She wanted to close the distance between them and kiss him the way she had been imagining for weeks, but doubt held her back. "I need time to think," she whispered. Yannick nodded, disappointment flickering across his face, but he respected her boundary. The rest of the evening was subdued, the earlier warmth replaced by uncertain tension. That night, Jessica lay awake in her bed, staring at the ceiling. In the living room, she could hear Yannick moving restlessly on the pull-out couch. She thought about the past 3 months, about the man who had come into her life as a blank slate and had slowly filled her world with light. She thought about how he made her laugh, how safe she felt with him, how right everything seemed when they were together. But she also thought about the uncertainty, about the possibility that his memories could return and everything would change. The decision was made for her 2 days later. Jessica was at work when she got a call from Detective Reynolds. "Miss Everett, I need you to come down to the station. It's about your John Doe." Her hands went cold. "Did you find out who he is? Just come down and bring him with you." Yannick looked nervous when they arrived at the police station. "Detective," Reynolds led them to his office, where a well-dressed woman in her 50s sat waiting. She had sharp eyes and an expensive handbag, and she looked at Yannick with professional assessment. "Mr. Nelson," Detective Reynolds said, "this is Margaret Foster. She's a private investigator who has been looking for someone." Margaret stood and pulled out a photograph. "Is this you?" Yannick stared at the photo. It was him, no question, but different. He was wearing an expensive suit, standing in front of a modern glass building, looking confident and polished. Nothing like the man in jeans and a warehouse uniform standing before them. "That's me," Yannick said slowly. "Who am I?" "Your name is Yannick Nash," Margaret said. You're the CEO of Nash Commercial Real Estate, one of the largest commercial property firms on the East Coast. You're worth approximately $2.8 billion. The room spun. Jessica grabbed the back of a chair to steady herself. A billionaire. Yannick was a billionaire. That's impossible, Yannick said. I work at a warehouse. Margaret pulled out more documents. You disappeared 3 months ago. You were driving back from a property inspection in the mountains when your car was forced off the road. The vehicle was found in a ravine, but there was no body. Everyone assumed you had been kidnapped or murdered. Your company has been in chaos. Your family has been desperate. Family, Yannick's voice cracked. Your father, Richard Nash. Your younger sister, Caroline. They've been searching for you. Jessica felt tears burning her eyes. Of course he had a family. Of course he had this whole enormous life. How could she have let herself believe that he was hers to keep? I don't remember any of this, Yannick said, still staring at the photograph. I don't remember being this person. The doctors said your amnesia might be permanent, Detective Reynolds said gently. But regardless, you have a life to return to, people who need you. Yannick looked at Jessica, his eyes filled with panic and confusion. She tried to smile, tried to be strong. This is good news, she said, though her voice shook. You found out who you are. But I don't know these people. I don't remember this life. I don't want to leave you. Margaret cleared her throat. Mr. Nash, your father is prepared to send a private plane immediately. There are legal matters that require your attention, business decisions that only you can make. Thousands of people's livelihoods depend on your company. The weight of responsibility settled visibly on Yannick's shoulders. Jessica could see him processing, understanding that he couldn't just walk away from that, no matter what he wanted. Can I have a day? He asked quietly. To process this, Margaret looked like she wanted to argue, but Detective Reynolds nodded. One day, but Miss Foster is right. You have responsibilities. They drove back to the apartment in silence. Inside, Yannick sank onto the couch, his head in his hands. I'm a billionaire, he said, like he was testing the words. I ran a company. I had this whole life. He looked up at Jessica. Why don't I care about any of it? Because you don't remember it, Jessica said, sitting beside him. But Yannick, those people are your family. They've been suffering, thinking you were dead. You have to go back. What about us? What about what I feel for you? Jessica felt tears spill over. There is no us, not really. I'm a nurse from a small town who makes $30 an hour. You're a billionaire CEO. We exist in completely different worlds. That doesn't matter. It does. You have responsibilities, a whole life waiting for you. And maybe when you get back to it, when you see your family and your company, the memories will return. You'll remember who you really are. I know who I really am, Yannick said fiercely. I'm the man who loves you. Jessica kissed him then, unable to hold back any longer. It was desperate and sad and perfect, and when they finally pulled apart, both of them were crying. I love you too, she whispered. That's why I'm telling you to go. You deserve to know your real life, your real self, and those people deserve to have you back. They spent the rest of the day together, memorizing each other, talking about everything and nothing. That night, Yannick held her on the couch, and Jessica tried to memorize the feeling of being in his arms, knowing it was the last time. The next morning, Margaret Foster arrived with a car service. Yannick packed the few belongings he had accumulated, then stood at Jessica's door looking lost. Come with me, he said suddenly. To New York. I'll need someone I trust, someone who knows me as I am now. Jessica shook her head, though it broke her heart. You need to do this without me. You need to reconnect with your real life, not cling to the few months when you weren't yourself. These months were the most real I've ever felt. You don't know that. You might feel completely different once you're back in your world. He pulled her close, kissing her forehead. I won't forget you, no matter what. But Jessica knew better. She understood brain injuries, understood how fragile memory could be. Very likely, once he was back in his real life, surrounded by the familiar even if he didn't consciously remember it, these months would fade. She would become a footnote, a kind stranger who had helped him during a difficult time. She watched from her window as the black car drove away, taking Yannick Nash back to his billionaire life and away from her forever. The weeks after Yannick left were the hardest of Jessica's life. She threw herself into work, taking extra shifts to avoid being alone in her apartment, which felt empty without him. Even Pickles seemed depressed, meowing sadly and looking for the man who had spoiled him with treats and attention. Jessica tried to move on. She went on a few dates with a teacher from the local high school, but it felt wrong. She couldn't stop comparing him to Yannick, couldn't stop wondering what he was doing, if he had recovered his memories, if he ever thought about her. She avoided looking him up online, knowing it would only hurt worse. But 2 months after he left, her curiosity got the better of her. The search results were overwhelming. Yannick Nash was everywhere. Forbes articles about his business empire, society page photos of him at charity galas, interviews about his miraculous return from the dead. In all the photos, he looked like the man in that first picture Margaret had shown them. Confident, polished, powerful. Nothing like the uncertain, gentle man who had lived in her apartment and learned to make her favorite pasta dish. There was no mention of amnesia in any article, no mention of where he had been during those missing months. His PR team had clearly crafted a careful narrative. Jessica wasn't surprised to be written out of the story. Spring came to Cedar Falls, and with it, a slow healing. Jessica started to feel like herself again. She could think about Yannick without crying. She could imagine a future that didn't include him. She was working a routine shift in early April when Dr. Morrison pulled her aside. "Jessica, there's someone here to see you. He's waiting in the consultation room." "Who is it?" Dr. Morrison gave her a strange look. "He said his name is Yannick Nash." Jessica's heart stopped. She must have heard wrong. "What?" "He's been waiting for an hour. He was very insistent about speaking with you." On shaking legs, Jessica walked to the consultation room. Through the small window in the door, she could see him. He was wearing an expensive suit, his hair professionally styled, looking every inch the billionaire CEO. When he turned and saw her, his face broke into a smile that was achingly familiar. Jessica pushed open the door. "What are you doing here?" "I needed to see you," Yannick said. "I know I should have called, but I was afraid you would tell me not to come." "I don't understand. It's been 4 months. I thought you would have moved on, gotten back to your life." "I did get back to my life. I've been running my company, reconnecting with my family, handling all the responsibilities that apparently define who Yannick Nash is supposed to be." He took a step closer. "But here's the thing, Jessica. I still don't remember. Not a single memory from before the accident has come back." Jessica stared at him. "Nothing. Nothing. The doctors say at this point it probably never will. The trauma was too severe. So I've had to rebuild my identity from scratch based on what other people tell me about who I was. That must be incredibly difficult." "It is. But you know what the strangest part is? Everyone keeps telling me about this person I used to be. Driven, ambitious, ruthless in business. Someone who worked 18-hour days and never took vacations. Someone who didn't have time for relationships or anything that didn't advance his career." Yannick's eyes locked on hers. "And I keep thinking that doesn't sound like me at all." "Maybe it's not," Jessica said softly. "Maybe the accident changed you. Or maybe it revealed who I really am underneath all the expectations and pressure." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a folder. "These are articles about me from before. Business magazines, interviews, profiles. I've read all of them, trying to understand who I was. And Jessica, I don't like that person very much. Yannick, let me finish. The person I was before cared about money and success and beating his competitors. The person I am now cares about small kindnesses, about cooking dinner for someone you love, about making sure a cat gets his favorite treats. The person I am now is in love with a nurse from Cedar Falls who saved his life and asked for nothing in return. Jessica felt tears welling up. You have responsibilities, a whole company depending on you. I know, and I'm handling them, but I'm doing it differently than before. I've restructured my company to be less about ruthless acquisition and more about sustainable development. I've started a foundation for brain injury research. I've learned how to delegate, how to have a life outside of work. He moved closer, close enough that she could see the gold flecks in his dark eyes. But none of it means anything without you. 4 months, Yannick. You've been gone for 4 months and I didn't hear from you once. I know. He looked pained. I'm sorry. I thought I was doing the right thing. You told me I needed to figure out my life without you and I was trying to respect that, but I also needed to be sure. I needed to know if what I felt for you was real or just dependence on the person who had helped me when I was lost. And? Jessica's voice was barely a whisper. It's real. I've met dozens of people these past months. Beautiful women, successful women, women who fit perfectly into my world. I felt nothing, because none of them are you. Jessica wanted to believe him. She wanted to throw herself into his arms and never let go, but doubt still nagged at her. Your family must hate me. They probably think I'm some gold digger who took advantage of you when you were vulnerable. Yannick smiled. Actually, my sister Caroline really wants to meet you. When I finally told her about you last month, she said I was an idiot for staying away so long. She said any woman who would take in a stranger with nothing and ask for nothing in return was exactly the kind of person I needed in my life. You told your family about me. Of course I did. Jessica, you're the most important person in my world. How could I not tell them about you? Jessica felt her resistance crumbling. This is crazy. We barely know each other. We lived together for 3 months. I know how you take your coffee, that you hate doing laundry, that you always check on your patients one last time before you leave your shift even when you're exhausted. I know you have a terrible singing voice, but you sing anyway. I know you're the kindest, strongest, most beautiful person I've ever met. He reached out and gently took her hand. And you know me better than anyone. You know who I am without all the money and prestige. You know the real me. The you without memories, Jessica said. What if they come back? What if you wake up one day and remember your old life and realize you want that person back? Then I'll deal with it. But Jessica, I've spent 4 months being told about who I used to be, and I don't want to be that person. I want to be the person I became with you. The person who actually knows how to live, not just work. The person who understands what really matters. Jessica looked at their intertwined hands, at this impossible man who had come crashing into her life and changed everything. She thought about the past 4 months of trying to forget him, of pretending she could move on. I missed you, she admitted. Every single day. Then give us a chance, a real chance. I know the logistics are complicated. I live in New York, you're here, but we can figure it out. I can commute, or you could move, or we could find some compromise. I don't care how we make it work as long as we're together. I have a life here. My job, my apartment, my friends. I know, and I'm not asking you to give that up. I'm just asking you to let me be part of it. Or let you be part of mine. Whatever works. He squeezed her hand. I love you, Jessica. I don't know if I ever loved anyone before the accident, but I know I love you now. I know it with absolute certainty. Jessica felt the last of her defenses crumble. She had been trying to protect herself, trying to be practical and realistic. But standing here, looking into his eyes, she realized that some things weren't practical or realistic. Some things were just right. "I love you too," she said, and then he was kissing her, and it felt like coming home. They stood there in the consultation room holding each other until Dr. Morrison knocked on the door. "Jessica, I hate to interrupt, but you have patience." Jessica pulled back, laughing and crying at the same time. "I'm sorry, I need to finish my shift." "I'll wait," Yannick said. "I'll wait as long as you need." He did wait, sitting patiently in the hospital cafeteria for the remaining 4 hours of her shift. When she finally emerged, still in her scrubs, he was right where he said he would be. "Take me home," Jessica said, and his face lit up. The next few months were a whirlwind of adjustment. Yannick had been serious about making it work. He rented a house in Cedar Falls and set up a home office so he could spend half his time there. The other half, Jessica would fly to New York, staying in his penthouse apartment that was almost comically luxurious compared to her modest life. It should have been awkward, navigating the vast difference in their lifestyles. But Yannick made it easy. He never made her feel less than because of her modest income. He never pushed her to quit her job or change who she was. Instead, he adapted to her world as much as she adapted to his. "This is weird," Jessica said one evening, attending her first charity gala in New York. She felt out of place in the expensive dress Yannick had bought her, surrounded by people who probably spent more on wine than she made in a month. "You're the most real person in this room," Yannick murmured in her ear. "Everyone else is playing a part. You're just being yourself." Meeting his family had been intimidating. Richard Nash was a formidable man in his 60s with sharp eyes that missed nothing, but when he shook Jessica's hand, his grip was warm. "Thank you for taking care of my son when he needed it most," Richard said. "Margaret told me you asked for nothing, expected nothing. That's rare." "I didn't do it for thanks," Jessica said. "I did it because it was right, which is exactly why you're perfect for him." Richard smiled, and Jessica could see where Yannick got his charm. "The boy he was before would never have fallen in love with someone like you. Too focused on business, on maintaining appearances. I'm not sorry he doesn't remember that person. This version is better." Caroline Nash was younger than Yannick, probably 28 or so, with the same dark hair and sharp features. She hugged Jessica immediately. "You made my brother human again," Caroline said. "Before the accident, he was practically a robot. Work, work, work. Now he actually calls me just to chat. He takes vacations. He laughs. So thank you." As the months passed, Jessica and Yannick built a life together that blended both their worlds. Jessica continued working as a nurse, but she also started getting involved with Yannick's charitable foundation, using her medical knowledge to help direct their healthcare initiatives. Yannick, in turn, became part of the Cedar Falls community. He got to know Jessica's friends, her colleagues. He would show up at the hospital with coffee for her during long shifts. He helped organize a fundraiser for new equipment in the emergency department. "You've changed him," Dr. Morrison told Jessica one day. "I've been reading about Yannick Nash. The man described in those articles is nothing like the man I see with you." "Maybe he changed himself," Jessica said. "I just gave him the space to do it. It wasn't always easy. There were moments when the differences in their backgrounds caused friction. Times when Jessica felt overwhelmed by his wealth, or when Yannick didn't understand why she couldn't just take time off work on a whim for a spontaneous trip. But they talked through it. They compromised. They learned each other's boundaries and needs. One evening in September, almost a year after Yannick had left Cedar Falls the first time, he took Jessica back to the spot on Route 47 where she had found him. "Why are we here?" Jessica asked as he parked the car. "Because this is where my life actually began," Yannick said. I know I existed before, but I don't remember it. As far as I'm concerned, my life started the moment you found me in the rain. That's a morbid way to think about it. Is it? I lost my memories, but I gained something so much more valuable. I gained the chance to become who I really want to be, not who circumstances and expectations made me. I gained you. He turned to face her, and Jessica saw that he was nervous. Which brings me to why I really brought you here. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small velvet box. Jessica's breath caught. I know this is probably too fast, Yannick said. We've only been together officially for 5 months, but I also know that I want to spend the rest of my life with you. I know that every decision I make, I'm thinking about how it affects us, our future. I know that when I imagine being 80 years old, you're right there beside me. He opened the box, revealing a stunning diamond ring that probably cost more than Jessica's car. Marry me, Jessica. Not because I'm a billionaire, not because of some fairy tale. Marry me because I'm the man who fell in love with you while learning how to be human again. Marry me because you're the only person who knows the real me. Marry me because I can't imagine my life without you in it. Jessica was crying, but she was also laughing. That ring is ridiculous. Too much. I can get a different one. No, it's perfect. It's perfect because it's you not understanding why anyone would need a diamond that big, but getting it anyway because you wanted to show me how serious you are. Is that a yes? Yes, you impossible man. Yes, I'll marry you. He slipped the ring on her finger, and they kissed in the same spot where their story had begun, where a near tragedy had turned into the greatest gift of both their lives. The wedding took place the following spring in Cedar Falls, a blend of both their worlds. The guest list included billionaires and business moguls, but also nurses and warehouse workers and everyone who had been part of their journey. Jessica walked down the aisle of the small community church where she had attended services growing up, past faces familiar and new. When she reached the altar where Yannick waited in his tuxedo, looking at her like she was the most precious thing in the world, she felt a sense of rightness that went beyond logic or reason. I never believed in fate, Yannick said in his vows, his voice strong and clear. But then, I don't remember enough of my life to know what I believed before. What I know now is that you finding me that night couldn't have been random chance. It had to be fate. It had to be the universe saying that even though I lost everything, I was about to gain something infinitely more valuable. Jessica's own vows were simpler. You came into my life with nothing and you gave me everything. You showed me what it means to love without reservation, to trust without fear. You're my best friend, my partner, my home. And I promise to spend the rest of my life showing you that the man you've become is exactly the man you were always meant to be. Richard Nash walked Jessica out after the ceremony, having insisted on standing in for her late father. You know, he said quietly, I've been thinking about what Caroline said about you making my son human. She was right, but not in the way she meant. Yannick was always human, always capable of this kind of love. He just needed the right person to bring it out of him. I think the accident brought it out of him, Jessica said. I just happened to be there. Don't sell yourself short. I've known my son for 33 years, and I've never seen him this happy. That's all you. The reception was held at Yannick's rented house, which had a beautiful view of the mountains. As Jessica danced with her new husband under the stars, she thought about the journey that had brought them here. You ever wish you could remember? She asked. Your life before? Yannick considered the question. Sometimes I'm curious. I wonder who I was, what I thought about things, what my relationships were like. But then I think about how much I love my life now, and I realize that remembering might ruin it. If I got those memories back, would I still be this person? Or would I revert to who I was before? You'd still be you, Jessica said firmly. Memories don't define who we are, choices do. And you've made the choice every single day to be this person, to build this life. With you, he added. I built it with you. 2 years into their marriage, Jessica found out she was pregnant. The news sent Yannick into a spiral of anxiety about what kind of father he would be, whether he had learned enough about parenting from his own father before losing his memories. What if I'm terrible at this? He worried, pacing their bedroom in the New York penthouse. Then you'll be terrible at it with me, Jessica said calmly. Yannick, every new parent is terrified, at least you have an excuse. Their daughter was born in November, perfect and tiny and screaming her head off. They named her Hope, because that was what she represented. Hope for the future, hope for the family they were building together, hope that love could overcome any obstacle. Watching Yannick hold their daughter for the first time, Jessica felt her heart swell to almost painful proportions. He was so gentle with Hope, so completely in awe of this tiny person they had created together. She's perfect, he whispered, tears streaming down his face. We made something perfect. Fatherhood transformed Yannick in ways Jessica hadn't expected. He became even more focused on work-life balance, restructuring his company further so he could be present for every milestone. He was the dad who never missed a school event, who knew all the other parents' names, who coached soccer even though he had no memory of ever playing. When Hope was 3, they had a son they named Thomas. Their family felt complete, their house filled with the beautiful chaos of children and love and life. One evening when Hope was 7 and Thomas was 4, Jessica found Yannick in his study, looking at old photographs from before his accident. Margaret Foster had compiled them years ago, a record of the life he couldn't remember. You okay? Jessica asked, settling beside him. I was just thinking, he said, gesturing to a photo of his younger self at some corporate event, looking serious and distant. That person has been gone for over 10 years now. Sometimes I wonder if he would recognize himself in who I've become. Does it matter? No, Yannick said, setting down the photo. It doesn't, because the life I have now with you and Hope and Thomas is everything I could ever want. If I had to lose my past to gain this future, it was worth it. Jessica leaned her head on his shoulder. For what it's worth, I think you would have found your way here eventually, even without the amnesia. Maybe it would have taken longer, maybe you would have had to hit rock bottom first. But I believe the person you are now was always inside you, waiting to come out. You think so, I know so. Because good people don't just appear fully formed. They're built on foundations, on values instilled by family and experience. You came from good people. Richard and Caroline are amazing. That goodness was always in you. Yannick pulled her close, kissing the top of her head. I love you, Jessica Nash. Thank you for finding me that night. Thank you for not giving up on me. Thank you for building this life with me. I'd do it all again in a heartbeat, Jessica said. As they sat together in the quiet of the evening, their children sleeping down the hall, Jessica thought about how strange and unpredictable life could be. 10 years ago, she had been a lonely nurse driving home in the rain, and he had been a man who had lost everything. Now they had a family, a home, a love that had been tested and proven stronger for it. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Yannick surprised Jessica with a trip back to Cedar Falls. He had secretly purchased a property on the outskirts of town, a beautiful house with mountain views. I know we love the New York penthouse, he said as he showed her around. And we'll keep it for when we need to be in the city. But I wanted us to have roots here, in the place where our story began. I want Hope and Thomas to grow up knowing this town, these people, the place that shaped the woman I fell in love with. Jessica walked through the empty rooms, imagining them filled with furniture and laughter and life. It's perfect, she said. When did you even have time to arrange this? I've been planning it for 2 years. Caroline helped. So did Dr. Morrison, actually. She's been keeping me updated on properties. They moved into the Cedar Falls house that summer, splitting their time between there and New York. Jessica went back to working part-time at Cedar Falls Memorial, and Yannick set up a permanent office in town. They became fixtures in the community, known not as the billionaire and his wife, but as Yannick and Jessica, the couple who volunteered at school events and hosted neighborhood barbecues. On the 15th anniversary of the night Jessica had found Yannick on Route 47, they drove out to that spot together. It had become a tradition, a way of honoring the strange twist of fate that had brought them together. 15 years, Jessica marveled. Sometimes it feels like yesterday, and sometimes it feels like you've always been in my life. I have been, Yannick said, in all the ways that matter. The person I was before that night is gone. The person I am now began with you. They stood together in the fading light, watching the mountains in the distance. Hope was in middle school now, fierce and independent like her mother. Thomas was in elementary school, thoughtful and kind like his father. Their lives were full and messy and beautiful. You ever regret it? Yannick asked suddenly. Taking in a stranger that night, your life would have been so much simpler if you had just called for an ambulance and driven on. Jessica turned to look at him, at the man who had become her entire world. His dark hair was starting to show threads of silver now, and there were lines around his eyes from years of laughter and love. He was still the most handsome man she had ever seen, but more than that, he was good. He was kind. He was home. Not for a single second, she said. You were never a stranger, Yannick. From the moment I saw you lying in that rain, some part of me knew you were important. Some part of me knew that saving you would change my life. And it did, in all the best ways. Even when I was a pain in the ass, insisting on reorganizing your kitchen cabinets, Jessica laughed. Even then. Especially then, because it meant you cared, that you wanted to contribute. You've never been the type of man who takes without giving back. Only because you taught me how to give, Yannick said. He pulled her close and she rested her head against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. I love you, Jessica. I'll love you for the rest of my life and whatever comes after. I love you too, always. As they drove back home, to the house filled with their children's laughter and the life they had built together, Jessica thought about the nature of memory and identity. Yannick had lost his past, but in doing so, he had gained a future more beautiful than either of them could have imagined. She thought about the scared, confused man she had found on that rainy road, and the confident, loving man sitting beside her now. They were the same person, and yet completely different. The accident had stripped away the protective layers he had built up, the armor of ambition and corporate success, revealing the gentle, genuine soul underneath. And she had fallen in love with that soul, not once but twice. First slowly, during those months in her tiny apartment when they were learning each other. And then again, more deliberately, when he had returned to claim the love they had both been too afraid to fully embrace. Their story wasn't conventional. It didn't follow the normal rules of romance. But it was theirs, built on a foundation of kindness and trust and the willingness to take a chance on someone when they needed it most. Years continued to pass, marked by the small milestones and large triumphs that make up a life. Hope graduated from high school and went to college, choosing to study social work because she wanted to help people the way her mother had helped her father. Thomas followed a few years later, pursuing business but with a focus on ethical corporate responsibility, inspired by the changes his father had made to Nash commercial real estate. When Yannick turned 50, the company threw a massive celebration in New York. Jessica stood beside him as speaker after speaker praised his innovative approaches to sustainable development, his charitable work, his transformation of the corporate culture. 20 years ago, Nash Commercial Real Estate was known for aggressive acquisition and ruthless business practices, one board member said. Today, we're known as industry leaders in environmental responsibility and employee welfare. That transformation is entirely due to Yannick's vision and leadership. Later, in the quiet of their hotel room, Yannick laughed. They're crediting me with vision, but I can't even remember making most of those early changes. I just did what felt right. That's the point, Jessica said. You followed your instincts instead of some playbook about how a CEO should act. You revolutionized an entire industry by being yourself. By being the person you helped me become, he corrected. Jessica was 62 when she finally retired from nursing. It had been a hard decision, but her body was telling her it was time. She had spent 37 years taking care of others, and now she wanted to focus on her family, on the grandchildren that Hope and Thomas were starting to provide. On her last day at Cedar Falls Memorial, there was a small ceremony. Dr. Morrison, now retired herself, came back to say a few words. Jessica Everett came to us as a young nursing graduate, full of compassion and dedication, Dr. Morrison said. Over the years, she saved countless lives and touched even more hearts. But the life I'll always remember her saving was Yannick Nash's, because in saving him, she showed all of us what it means to truly care for another person without expecting anything in return. That evening, Yannick cooked Jessica her favorite meal, the same pasta dish he had perfected during those early months in her apartment. It had become a tradition, something he made for her on important occasions. I've been thinking, he said as they ate on their back porch, watching the sunset over the mountains, about how much our lives have been defined by chance. If you had been driving a different route that night, if you had been 5 minutes earlier or later, if someone else had found me first, everything would be different. But I did find you, Jessica said. And maybe it wasn't chance. Maybe it was always meant to be this way. Yannick reached across the table and took her hand. They both wore wedding rings that had grown worn with time, symbols of the decades they had spent together. Do you know what I'm most grateful for? He asked. Not the second chance at life, not the opportunity to rebuild myself. I'm most grateful that I get to spend every day with you, that I get to wake up beside you, laugh with you, watch our grandchildren grow with you. That's the real gift. Jessica felt tears prick her eyes. Even after all these years, he could still make her heart swell with love. You're going to make me cry, and I specifically told myself I was done crying today. Sorry, he said, though he was smiling. Can't help it. I'm just a man in love with his wife. For 32 years now. Best 32 years of my life. Well, only 32 years of my life, technically, but you know what I mean. They laughed together, the easy laughter of two people who had weathered storms and celebrated triumphs side by side. Who had built a life from nothing, who had chosen each other every single day. That night, lying in bed with Yannick's arms around her, Jessica thought about the young nurse who had been driving home in the rain so many years ago. That woman had been lonely, convinced she was too busy for love, resigned to a solitary life of work and responsibility. She wished she could go back and tell that young woman what was waiting for her. That the broken man she was about to find on the side of the road would become her everything. That saving his life would save her own in ways she couldn't yet imagine. But maybe it was better that she hadn't known. Maybe the beauty of their story was in its unpredictability, in the way they had stumbled into love without planning or expectation. What are you thinking about? Yannick murmured, half asleep. Just how lucky I am, Jessica whispered. How lucky we both are. Luckiest man alive, he agreed, pressing a kiss to her shoulder. Love you, Jess. Love you too. As she drifted off to sleep, Jessica Everett Nash felt a sense of profound contentment. They had decades left together, she hoped, but even if they didn't, even if tomorrow was their last day, it would be enough. Because they had built something extraordinary from the ruins of a tragedy. They had proven that sometimes losing everything was the first step to gaining what really mattered. And what really mattered was this: love, family, the choice to see beyond circumstances to the person underneath. The courage to take a chance on a stranger in the rain, and the wisdom to recognize when that stranger becomes your home. Their love story hadn't been conventional or easy. But it had been real, and it had been theirs, and that made it absolutely perfect.